Hey, look, we're back. Thank you, everybody, for
I'm
your
back.
patience. I am Catherine Toll. This is Andrew
I'm
Goodenough.
good enough.
Andrew, happy Saturday again. Thank you for being my co-host on this, our Seattle Indies Expo bonus round. We are about to be joined by two folks from Keyboard Kommander. They are Stephen and William. Stephen and William, hello. Welcome back.
Hey, everyone. It's great to be again.
Hello, hello.
All right. William, can you give me a quick elevator pitch for what Keyboard Kommander is?
Sure. So Keyboard Kommander is a typing tutor with unique narrative and gameplay mechanics that bring a cool spin to the genre. We've got an awesome story, and we've got some really cool game mechanics to back up the about 10 hours of gameplay. So,
wow, 10 hours of typing. That'll teach anyone to type well.
It's a lot of typing. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work to get all the way through the story, especially with like how hard some of the levels get towards the end. So, yeah.
So we're taking a look at me typing, and I'm hopefully going to do it quiet enough so you can't hear it.
You're doing great
on the stream.
I was just thinking that you said that because I'm like big into keyboards and I have like a really loud one, so it's funny to think that anyone would want their key presses to not be obnoxiously loud. But
I got the quietest mechanical keyboard I possibly could. I did a bunch of research, tried out a bunch of keys, and this is as quiet as I can type on an actual mechanical keyboard. So hopefully you can't hear it too bad. One thing that I noticed last night when I was playing the game is the first time I ran through this, it was so fast-paced, and I wasn't having any recollection of what I was typing. But then when I, unfortunately failed something and had to restart, then I was reading the story. What to you is the difference between having this be a narrative game and a typing game?
Right. So the question was, what's the difference between this being a narrative game versus like a traditional typing tutor is how I'm interpreting the question. And I'll take that on a few levels. So basically our core like story gameplay loop, the idea is that the levels are pretty hard. And especially on like some of the harder difficulties, you're expected to like play through a level a couple of times and fail a few times before you progress. And so the coins that you get will actually accumulate even if you lose a level. So the idea being that if you're stuck on a level, you'll keep playing through it until you get enough currency to buy enough upgrades to power through. And so the idea there is that you don't really notice the story the first time you play through. You kind of pick up the story and start to like, if the level's hard enough, you might even be like memorizing the words as you're typing along so that you can type it faster. And then after you've beaten the level, then you've unlocked a journal entry where you can go back and actually read what you've typed. So it's not intended to be like, oh, like play through one time, like type it through once on the easiest difficulty and like understand everything on your first go. It's kind of like something that's supposed to like sneak up on you a little bit. So I think that's what we mean by like having like a narrative edge to a typing tutor. Steve, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, no, that's totally accurate and 100%. Like, I always find it very impressive when I see William or someone else play this game because I am not great at this game.
Is that weird to work on a game that you aren't necessarily great at? Like, do you not necessarily associate your type of playstyle with this kind of game?
No, it's just that, this one is, it's like you said when you were playing it last night, it's really intense and it's really fun and everything like that. I've not like focused on typing since like middle school. So I mess up quite a bit in that. And as far as like, does it impede my development of working on this? Not really, because I do all the audio things for the game. So it's it's actually easier for me to like watch something happen than necessarily play it. And I can like kind of hone in on all the things that need to be, all the cracks that need to be filled audio wise and everything like that.
If I could add 2 comments to that last train of thought, though. So it's not just about like typing. Typing is sort of like the input mechanism. So it's really about being able to type fluently while thinking about the strategy that you're laying out and like while you're focusing on target prioritization, leaving the right traps for zombies so that they crash into them and get stunned, switching your weapons, which you can use tab to use a different weapon if you want to try that out real quick, switching your weapons to use the right one at a given time. So typing's really like something that you kind of have to get down as like your input mechanism as opposed to like thinking about it, where some typing games it's just really about typing the words. This is about typing the words to do something. And I think that's more of like a practical skill set when you think about it, because typing doesn't really exist in isolation. It's not like people are like handwriting down their emails and then like typing them out. But anyway, the other point I was getting at was Seth, I think, had a much bigger blocker as the writer on the project. He's the writer, but his typing style is like hunt and peck. Like he doesn't even use like the home row. So it's been a real challenge for us to try and show him how his story is sort of like presented and stuff, just because he can't type through it at any reasonable pace. So that's been an interesting development challenge there, and I just figured I'd comment on that because Steve was talking about how it didn't affect him as much as the sound person. But yeah.
So you guys touched on a little bit there.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just curious if you were inspired at all Typing of the Dead.
Yeah, I played Typing of the Dead, and then I was like, I need to do something different than this, but like also make like a spiritual kind of inspired game by that, because like I played Typing of the Dead, and that was like immediately like my favorite game, and I eventually got kind of bored with it because even in Typing of the Dead Overkill, like you don't really think that much about what you're doing beyond like, let me type the words. And so I tried to make a game where like, okay, like if you take this at super surface level and you're just typing out the story and you're not on the hardest difficulty, you'll probably be successful over time. And the game's designed so that it can be played as a pure typing tutor. But I really wanted to provide something that has another like higher level that you can really like jump into and really think about what you're doing a lot more in terms of prioritizing which zombies you're shooting or which weapons you're using or what like upgrade kind of build you're going for. As well as like the whole story component too. So like, yeah, I saw Typing of the Dead and it was like immediately like a favorite game of mine. And I'm like, I just want to do like more than this,
Cool.
Yeah. And that's not a dunk on that game at all. For what it tries, it's like really awesome. I love that game. So
yeah. That's just the first thing that I thought of when I saw this game is, oh man, I personally love Typing of the Dead and was so excited when the reboot came out because my friend had it for the Dreamcast and had the keyboard and everything. But since I can't show the music on my computer right now, I was wondering if we could transfer over to Steven's machine and hear a little bit about the music production in this game because the music is amazing and I wish you could all be hearing it. So how about we all hear it? We'll take a second to have production switch over the screens and such. But, William, at what point in the development process did you decide to partner up with Steven for the audio?
Yeah, so I partnered with Steven after we showed up at 6, back when it was in person about like 3 years ago. And the previous sound person had introduced us, and he basically took over from their work. Do you want to talk more about that, Steve? Or is it hard to do that while you're like pulling it up right now? I'm not sure.
No, I'm good. I've got it pulled up. It's ready to go. Dennis was the previous sound person on Keyboard Kommander, and he left to Texas to work for an indie studio down in Texas, and introduced me to William and was like, hey, this is what I've been kind of working on the side, and it's really fun. Do you want to take over for me? And I was like, sure, I'll take over. It's like just finishing up the last couple things, right?
3 years ago.
Later.
3 years later.
Yeah.
But
so like the big thing was we sort of like after the last 6 we like basically redesigned the entire input system and like gameplay loop to make everything a lot more intuitive and like easier to pick up on. So I mean the game was basically like redesigned after last 6, and that was a really like pivotal moment in our development process. So development cycle, I guess
Steven,
I should say.
You do audio design and music design for this, right? Does you also do the sound work for it?
Yes, yeah, I do the voiceover stuff, which is like that sort of thing there, and then also do the sound effects and then the music as well. Kind of like all of the audio things in one sort of thing for this. But yeah, William was talking about the fact that this was they changed everything over right after 6 and they completely gutted the code. And we kind of took that opportunity kind of when we planned forward, we decided to switch from the old middleware software. And for those people that don't understand what middleware is, middleware is what we're kind of looking at right here. This is Fmod. And what you do with middleware is it allows the audio people who may not be as savvy on coding to still get what they want out of the audio. And it makes it easy for the programmer to take all of those and put them directly into the code, because it writes a lot of the actionable codes and stuff for you. And you kind of just have to like copy and paste it in there, and then Fmod will update everything as it gets updated. So
when he says easy, he means easier than using Unity's built-in stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we switched over to Fmod from Wise, and mainly because at the time, Fmod and Wise, there was a big difference on how many assets and everything you could get for free on a game. And Fmod is free up to a certain amount of funding that you have for the game, is what it's about. So they're really friendly towards indie developers that don't have massive budgets to build games and everything like that. And I personally also prefer using Fmod over Wise. It's not as robust as Wise is, but Wise is very 1999 Windows. Like, you have to know all these sub menus and menus, and it's like crazy complicated. And I've used it several times. Right, exactly. And like, I'm part of several like Wise groups and everything like that. It's just like, hey, how do I do this? And it's like, like all this stuff. So it's a great, and it's definitely more robust than I think Fmod is, but Fmod's a lot more user-friendly towards composers that are used to using digital audio workstations or DAWs, because they kind of set it up visually to be that way. And so there's three things that composers and sound designers are always kind of really focused on. And the first one is always immersion, right? We're trying to immerse the player in whatever world the developers want us to be in. And the second is, interactivity. We want everything to be interactive with the player. It's not like a movie where you can just like set a soundtrack after everything's done and be like, okay, I'm going to hit all these moments precisely exactly how they're supposed to be hit. And build like this, because it's never going to change. It's like, no, that's got to be adaptable and interactive. And that's the last one is adaptability for your audio. It needs to be adaptive to situations and everything like that. And we did that. I'm kind of going to show you guys a couple different ways to do that in this now.
Cool.
So,
so we're looking at Fmod.
Yeah.
Fmod.
So in Fmod, you just label everything how you want to be labeled, obviously. So, for example, this was Dennis's music track that he did here. Now, I went back through Dennis's and I completely reorchestrated it, which means I changed all the instruments that he did and kind of created this new world, because I didn't have all the same libraries, but I had the sounds that he had sent to me. So
we also had some like... I was just gonna say, we also had like a bit of a thematic change between when Dennis was working on the soundtrack and when you took over a bit. We kind of took like the theming and like the graphics in like a bit of a different direction. So the sound had to change for that reason too.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
One of the things that we have on here, what I've done on this one is kind of it's more of a hybrid style on here. So when you have game audio, you tend to have a couple of different ways to make it interactive. You don't want the same exact music always playing over and over again necessarily. A lot of times you want it to change when things get a little hairy and things get a little crazy. So on this particular one, what we have on this is it starts off with a layering idea, and we have that set to a parameter of intensity. And we set our intensity level, I believe, on a combination of both health and how many zombies are on the screen at the same time. And that changes how intense the music gets. So if we start off with layer 1, it's simply just the percussion layer. But if we increase the intensity, bring us up to... So that, what we did there is we switched it from a section then. We went from one section to another, which is slightly varying the music that's on there, but we can just increase that continually, and then we can go back. So like we'll just put that at 100 intensity here. So this is at the peak of intensity level for us. And then we can always come back and drop it even down to 0 if we want to. Then when it gets past its looping region.
I'm seeing scattered around Fmod here, different like labels and tags, you have sections and layers, and 2 section 2 and 2 section 3. Is this something that we can trigger from the code? What does that look like?
Yeah, basically, so I have set parameters, and if I click on this, you'll see that I have a condition on here. And this is a marker that I have in here. And so once the timeline of the music hits this marker, it does a check in the code. What is the intensity level set at? And then if it's set between 60 and 100, it's going to jump to section 2.
So intensity is straight up
And then
variable.
we have callbacks in like the Unity end that will basically just set those variables based off the number of zombies and the amount of health as that changes.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is
So what is the intensity variable in the game? Like, is that like how many enemies are on the screen at a time? Like, how are you informing the music?
It's enemies on screen and the amount of health that the player has. I tried working with some other stuff as well, and that was just it was the most impactful to use those two. So
yeah. So this was like the one that I took from Dennis on here, and then this one's a little premiere because we just got this figured out here this last week.
I'm hoping to get this one in by Sunday. Sorry.
This is the new music here that we've got on here, and you can see it's a lot more crazy on markers.
You're going to hear it here first, folks. Debut.
Yeah, debut. Like William was saying, we definitely we changed the aesthetic of the game to be more of a Escape from New York, Total Recall, kind of like these,
1980s dystopian 80s. Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
I would say, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we really wanted to change that and add even more synthesizers, make you feel like it's 1984 or something like that. So we're slowly adding in more music now, kind of building up to the release of the game here in a few months, hopefully, and we'll have all of these. We'll have all of these here on that. So yeah, we can just take a listen to this real quick. And then we had the similar idea here, now that we're in our looping sections, of having this kind of just percussion line for our first layer of intensity. And this will just continue to loop until stuff happens on the screen, obviously. And then we can increase the intensity. We'll increase this to 40. And this one's a lot more adaptable as far as it will go to a bunch of different sections all over the place. And just 100% this.
Nice.
Now we're like in our major intense level where the base is getting really damaged.
Is this like a boss fight kind of situation that you're in?
It's
or
more-
just your
Feels
almost
like it has to be.
Just it's the game gets so intense when it's like
Yeah.
you're down to your last level and there's so many zombies around you, so we just have it as that one. And then we can drop this back if we want to go all the way back to 0, we can.
That's so cool, dude. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so this is this is kind of how music works and all that.
Yeah. You do music, you do sound effects. I know you, when I worked with you in the past, you've done voiceover. Is there any voiceover in this game?
Currently, there's only the zombie sounds, which isn't really voiceover, but it's a lot of like mixed with animal sounds. But there could potentially be voiceover. It's something that we're currently toying with.
We've been talking about it.
Yeah.
I just had this horrible thought,
zombies.
which is that.
I want to hear some zombies.
Well,
Yeah.
so I was just like, you know how they did like Disco Elysium, the final cut. Like, I have an excuse to like never stop working on this game if we can go back and do voiceovers. I don't know.
So this is like the sound effects side, so it's a lot different than the music. There's not like
Right.
a lot of other things, but what we have here is
These will
that
be triggered as
this will
stats.
trigger. These will just trigger random. Like I have, what is it? So there's 8 zombie sounds in here in this playlist, and so every time this is triggered, it'll trigger a new.
Is that random
zombie.
shuffled, or is that like is it in order sequence?
This one is random shuffled on here.
Cool.
And the original intent was to have some kind of like digital-ish sounding zombies, because there's this idea that, you know, they're not zombies like the undead that have been risen back and everything. It's that people have turned into zombies from 5G or some silly nonsense.
It was
like
because
that.
they spent too much time on Facebook, was I think
course.
story. But yeah.
We have a question
There's a lot of
from
cellular.
chat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
David Njiha asks, he says, I might be doing a typing game in the future. What challenges are there programming typing errors? Is it similar to creating something like a WYSIWYG? What challenges are there programming typing errors?
Programming typing errors, like is he talking about the feedback you get to the player if you've like programmed in the typing like a typo or something? One thing that's interesting about our game is if you look at like typing of the dead, there's not as much penalty for a typo. Like it might set you back to the beginning of the word. We wanted to have a lot of like feedback that made the player encouraged to type as accurately as possible. If you look at like Epistory, it's also a lot more forgiving in terms of typos. For us, we try to make it clear at which point in the word they're at, and we don't have them like backspace back to get to the right part of the word, so they'll lose their combo if they make a typo, and the ragers in game will actually gain power from the typos that the players make, and will start moving towards the base faster and destroying upgrades. Basically, we have like a callback system, so every item in the game that is activated by a typo subscribes to like the global typo listener, and when the player makes a typo, all of those callbacks are activated, which engages the rager and engages the UI feedback for the game. We gave a lot of like careful thought to that, and we're doing something a bit different from what other typing tutors are doing. And we hope that our mechanics will both preserve flow state for less experienced typists and reward more experienced typists for their precision. So,
Yep.
Does that answer their question? Or maybe.
If it doesn't, join the Discord. William is here on the Discord. I'm sure we could answer more of your questions as you embark on this new typing game. Always need more typing games. We have.
If we switch back, sorry, just to switch back to gameplay, I had a question about your upgrade. Tree and things that I'm looking at here. In a second, if we get it back, make sure that. Maybe. Well, I'm looking at it, and it seems there's like the underscore player. There we go. So underscore player heal, tools, upgrade, these sorts of things. I mean, for one, I think maybe I found a bug. Maybe this isn't supposed to happen. I'm not sure.
That's like not supposed to happen. It's actually supposed to be showing the text there. So now I'm like panicking because we're seeing a bug like live on screen. But I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that we stayed on that menu for like 30 minutes because like that was working.
We didn't actually. I just reloaded.
Okay.
I just reloaded. But I also really love finding weird bugs in games because that's for some reason my specialty. But I'm curious here, like, what would you recommend? Like, okay, what am I trying to say?
Okay, so the cost of the upgrades goes up as you buy them. So the player is encouraged to like sort of upgrade like multiple different weapons and stuff. That being said, like every player is going to have like a favorite weapon and like a favorite play style. So they might go for upgrading the launcher effect to get like a better area of effect damage when like the zombies are clustered together. There's a lot of mechanics that involve getting the zombies like grouped together and like stunned so they can't move, and then using the launcher to drop like an AoE effect that'll burn them all up. So what I'm trying to say is there is like a little bit of a preference towards like play style, but the gameplay will reward players who are able to like use the different weapons that they've upgraded together. So you are rewarded for distributing your upgrades across like different categories.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I like that it's not just a typing game, that there is strategy behind it. It is a bit of an RPG. You have these different play styles with different weapons, and you know, you can feel like, I don't know, it feels a little bit XCOM to me in a lot of ways in the sort of like look and feel of the game. I don't know if that's intentional or inspired at all, but I
am a huge XCOM fan actually. So
are you? Okay, me too.
Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to call out the very programmatic aspects of the game as well. Like there's underscores under everything, and it's rifle dot upgrade. I don't know. I love details like that. I mentioned it in the previous game too, but I'm the kind of player who appreciates those things, so hopefully you keep
I was like thinking about how I laid out the menu, and I'm like, I'm just gonna be a total programmer and be like, oh look, I'm using old school like 1990s underscores for my variables to show that they're like local variables or whatever, and then it looks like a little function. I'm distressed that we're seeing a bug there, which I keep calling attention to, which you're not supposed to do when you're presenting stuff, but I am. I'll fix that later today probably.
This is literally William's worst nightmare right now.
Yeah, no, this is actually like my worst nightmare.
Sorry that I made that.
He's been taking it in stride though. He's very calm.
No,
at least on the above.
I didn't mean to close it.
Appearance.
Okay.
So we are going to have to wrap up here shortly, but I'm curious. It's not something we called out today, but you have mentioned in the past that you have been working on the game for a number of years. What has it been like for you to keep going, keep plugging away? Do you have advice for other developers who maybe have an older project that they've been working on and are interested in picking it back up?
Yeah, this is pretty classic advice. So I've been working on this game for 8 years. So I was a naive college sophomore when I started this project. I am now old. So basically the thing is, when you work on stuff for a long time, you get smarter along the way, and you might get attached to some mechanics that you incorporated like really early on in development. And you really have to be okay and at peace with knowing that you know more now than you did when you implemented those mechanics originally. The game is different and feels different now than it did when you originally implemented those mechanics. And you have to be okay with really just like cutting the stuff that you love. And it's really painful. But Steven was there after 6 when we audited like all the gameplay mechanics. And I was like on the verge of tears because I'm like, we're going to have to cut this. We're going to have to cut that. We're going to have to redo this. We're going to have to redo that. Yes, that's a big thing. Another thing is I think it's important to make the right investments in your software architecture and the right investments in your test tools. I see a lot of indie studios that don't do any form of test-driven development. I come from a very like industrial software engineering background, and test-driven development is really important to me. Writing good code is important to me. So throw out your bad code, write lots of tests, throw out the mechanics you love if other people don't like them. And it's like game development. It's supposed to be painful, right? Like.
Oh, and last little bit of advice. Do your pre-production stuff in pre-production. Don't wait until like end of production to start doing pre-production stuff. So like, you got all your mechanics and everything like that, which is great because I hear that from programmers all the time, but you still need to like figure out what makes the game like the driving and fun, and then create how you're going to wrap it up. Like, is it going to be a story? Is it going to just be an arcade game and stuff like that? Like, make that decision so that way it's not something that suddenly is evolving through time, and then you have to end up waiting for things like story and those kind of more early production things towards the end of your production, because that can really drag a project.
I don't really think me or Steven knew what this game was supposed to be until about like a year ago, right? Like even after 6, even after we had re-architected all of the mechanics to like make like a good gameplay experience, we still hadn't settled on like the theme or the unity of design. And it's like it's fallen together now, I think, a lot because we got lucky, and I think we have like a unified design now that we can like ride home like to finish this, hopefully. I hope. But like yeah, sorry, I'm taking too much time here. But
we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
Fine. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'll contact y'all about voice acting later. Steven, thank you so much for showing us Fmod and everything on the audio side of things. It was a real treat for me.
That was awesome.
And I really appreciate both of you coming on the show and talking with us again this week. So please have a great rest of your Saturday. We are going to be back in 5 minutes with Wildfire Swap. So don't go anywhere. We have more wonderful devs to talk to in a few minutes. We'll be right back.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.